Hey everybody, I am Nick Savacci, and this is the Rogue Overland Adventure Chat podcast. This is episode 13.
And I'm Mike Schaefer. And today we're going to talk to our buddy Daniel Grooters, and he's going to tell us all about his experience at the Mint 400 and the Groot X Racing, right?
Right, that's right. Thanks,
Did I
boys,
get it
for having
right?
me. Nailed it.
Nice.
Nailed it ish. Good enough.
Groot, I've known you for a long time, way back in the day, Nissan community. And I'm really excited to have you on here. I know you know Mike really well at this point also. So thanks for being here, man. We're excited to have you.
Stoked to be here. Share a little bit of my experiences. It's good to talk to you guys again and hop on here and kind of get into the wild experiences we've been having recently.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. One of our earlier episodes, I don't remember which one it was, but we plugged you a little bit. We were talking about it, and Mike had a comment, something along the lines of, "Yeah, he's the only one out there racing a Nissan Xterra."
Yeah, it's true. There was one guy, he got too old because and he can't race it anymore. So I'm basically the last holdout.
Carrying the torch, man, carrying the
Yeah,
Oh,
torch.
big
somebody's
time.
got to do it.
Well,
Um,
and truthfully though, it has a Datsun badge on the front. And when I go through anywhere I go, and like especially when you go through contingencies and there's all the cars, the Datsun badge is by far the absolutely most talked about thing on the entire truck. Everybody walks
Dude,
by, looks at it, and they're like, "It's a Datsun badge." They come over and they start talking about some Datsun that their dad had or they had. It is. So I drive a Nissan Datsun Xterra.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I can relate, man. Like one of the first cars that I went through on my own, with my dad, but that I fully went through was yeah, a 280Z. So I feel it. Um, I'm excited to get into some of the racing stuff because I actually don't know a lot about desert racing per se. But before we do, I know you, Mike knows you. But let's let some of the people who maybe haven't met you learn a little bit about you. So if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into the outdoors, how you got into off-roading, and then how you wound up racing a second gen Xterra.
Well, I'll do the far back as quick as I can. Far back, I got a Ford Ranger when I was 16 and put some bigger tires on it and just went around bouncing around and hurting myself in my truck all over the place. Um, and then like while I was working at a tire shop, a guy came in and he's like, "Hey, you changed tires, great. You want to come down to the BF? You want to come and pit crew the Baja 1000 with me for BF Goodrich?"
Wow.
And I was like,
I
of
know.
course, that sounds like the
Yeah,
best thing in the world.
shoot,
And it
yeah.
was basically like he just paid for everything. And I went down with a BF Goodrich semi truck, and I rode in a RV, and we drove all the way down to the tip of Baja, Mexico. And eating tacos and drinking beer at 18 all the way down with like a bunch of
That's
guys that I
awesome.
met like 3 weeks before that. And my parents were like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "It's gonna be fun." And that's like, I mean, you guys know that's the story of my life. Like, and somehow it just like works out, like Power Rock story, all these other stories. But this happened like way back, and yeah, we pit crewed for BFG, and we stayed up 24 hours just swapping tires, welding race trucks, and because that was a year it was a 1,700 mile race, which after just running a 300-mile race, like that blows my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Blows my mind. Like 1,700 miles in Baja. And we were close to the end, and these cars were coming in just, I mean, front ends blown out. We welded a couple trucks. We welded their suspension up solid so they could get to the end because they're still like, I don't know, like 80 miles or 100 miles
Oh my
after our pit.
gosh.
I
And
can't
it
imagine
was
running
just
through ball on solid
yeah,
suspension.
yeah, exactly. And that was way back when the Leduc brothers were running Jeep Speed, and that was there was so many big names that at the time I didn't really know. But now that I've been in desert racing for a little while, I'm like, wow, all these guys. This is back when they were starting off. When they were just getting the name for themselves. They were basically where I'm at now, and that was the bug that bit me. and from there, I had a couple little Ford Rangers that I thought I was the, long travel king, but basically I just had a, big spring in it. And kind of put that all on hold, joined the military for a while. And when I got it back out of the military and came back from being overseas, I got a Nissan Xterra because at the time I needed a family vehicle. I had a couple kids. Bought a Nissan Xterra because I saw that people were off-roading them a little bit, and it was something that I got through a dealership that I was working at, and I just kind of fell into it. I had no idea. It was basically the same as your truck, Nick. It was just silver, and so same thing again. I saw on a forum that there was this Moab off-road event, and I called my brother, "Hey, there's a Moab off-road event in like 2 months. You want to go?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so, all these people from the internet that I have no idea who they are going to this place, and me and my brother drove out to Moab and had the most awesome time off-roading, and and that was kind of more of a off-road bug that bit me. I always been into it. My brother was into it, and so I started doing Moab every year. I started off-roading local, started my own little online business selling Nissan parts for off-road trucks, and that's kind of how I met you guys and all these different Nissan people. I just kind of fell into it. And I was going to Tennessee, I was going to Moab, I was doing your Rogue events.
Yeah.
And you meet all these cool people, and that's now I have this pit crew, this core group of homies out in Vegas that like drop of a hat, they're down to come out and they're all about it. And it's so beautiful. Like I'm a big friendship guy. Like I love having like really
Yeah.
hardcore good
Solid friends.
friends and all the people that I met. And we all have common interests in this kind of stuff. So it's pretty simple for all of us. We're all into the same stuff. So yeah, that's kind of my history in off-roading. 8 years ago, the Nissan Xterra race truck that you see right there, that was my daily driver, and I crashed it the day before I was supposed to go to Moab. I was sponsoring the event, had
And you
it full
rented a
of,
Ford F-150,
yeah,
right?
it was
I've
full
heard
of it
that
was full of
story.
shirts. I ran over some old lady's hood, and they totaled it. I bought it for $2,000 back from the insurance company, and it sat in my garage for maybe a year. And I finally had bought a new truck, and I'm like, what do I got to do with this? And I was like, you know what? This is and I was actually racing with another Nissan Xterra at the time.
The yellow one, right?
Yeah, that I was sponsoring. It was an old factory sponsored race truck. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want to put money into somebody else's race program. It's my time, like that Baja experience never left me. It was always just like sitting back there waiting for me to just pull the trigger. And so that was 8 years ago, and literally it took me about 7 years to get a race truck put together to where I could actually race it. So
Yeah, I think I've been listening to you. Well, I think the whole time I've known you, you've been talking about
yeah,
the race truck, the race truck.
yeah,
And I'm like, where's this race
yeah.
truck that everybody
You're like,
keeps
it's not
talking
on the
about?
racetrack yet because you haven't raced it. So finally I'm there. And truthfully, like this last, I mean, what is it, 2 weeks ago-ish? I don't even remember. That was like a life goal that was 20 years in the making. You know what I'm saying? Like like the fulfillment of what went down it was astronomical in my little bucket list world. And so like I feel like I've come like a really long way because working on I'm like a here now kind of guy. I'm not a planner. Like Nick is the planner.
Yes.
He'll plan something out. He'll have the timelines and stuff. I'm like here and now. And for me to work on something for 8 years and actually establish that the and make it happen, it's a big thing for me. It's a big thing in my life. It gives me a little confidence that it's not just something that like you're gonna go run a marathon. You go run for a couple of weeks or 2 months and go do it, and you kill yourself, and then you're on to the next thing. For me, like this was kind of a big life event.
You could
It's
tell,
funny.
man, when you cross the sorry, when you cross the finish line that day, man, you could just see all the. I mean, you guys were spanked too, so starving and dehydrated and everything else, but you could just see the emotion in your face about like, holy crap, man, we freaking did this thing, you know, and it was amazing to watch it, to be there, be part of that.
Clarify just for anybody not in the loop, the race that you just finished, it's the mint 400, right?
Yeah, so yeah, it's basically the biggest race in the States as far as I think the volume of race cars, the show of it. They do last year I did it, I didn't do it this year, but they do a parade of all the race vehicles right down Las Vegas Boulevard, down the strip. The contingency is, excuse me, when you go to get your vehicle inspected right before the race, the day before the race, there's a huge line, and this was on Fremont Street. There's a huge line of vendors down Fremont Street of every big off-road, anything that you could possibly think of is there. And
Yeah.
they have UFC fighters there that are racing. They have like rock stars playing freaking music, and I mean it is a show and it is a huge event. And I I went and I broke down. I raced with that other Xterra. I don't know, 7 years ago. I don't even remember. And when I saw that, I was like, this is the race that I got to do. This is the one that I got to conquer. Baja is like a whole nother animal, like a huge undertaking, and I think that might be my next long-term goal. I don't know yet. I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but like the Baja 1000 is something that like that would be the ultimate accomplishment for my racing career. But the Mint 400 is like in the States, um, the most the biggest off-road race in the States. And so that was my goal to do it. So it's a race. It actually starts outside of Primm, Nevada, right over state line. They call it the Mint 400 because way back in the 80s, I want to say there's the Mint Casino, and that's where they used to hold this race, and it was gone for a very long time. And they brought it back, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, and they started doing it. But it was a huge race back in the day. So it's for the big guys, the trophy trucks and the class ones, and then the 14 trucks and all the big, ridiculously expensive, super wild trucks. They do 4 laps, and it's about 95 miles per lap, somewhere around there, 90 to 95. It kind of generally changes every year. But I do 3 laps in my class. Class 7 is the class that I run in. But it's 3 big laps. You start in Prim, there's a little infield, and that's what this picture is of the little infield. You do a little infield section, and then it's just you go over lake beds and rock quarries and skinny passes up through the mountains and whoop sections that would make your eyes bleed if I ever see them again. But yeah, it's a pretty wild race.
There's a lot to unwrap here, but you said something earlier that I do want to comment on, right? You said that you are not the planner, right? You're the live now, and that is the absolute truth. If you know Groot, like Groot is down at the drop of a hat for any adventure. But if you're like, hey man, 10 weeks from now, like we're thinking about doing this thing, it's going to be the most epic adventure of your life, but we just got to plan it out and get it secured in. It'd be like, I don't know if I could do it, man. But if you call him the day before,
Yeah,
then he's down. So
absolutely.
and like you said, I'm a type A, and I do want to give you props because you said to me once, and I think it's some of the most epic advice I've ever received in my life. And you said something along the lines of, Nick, sometimes you just got to say yes. And I don't remember what we were talking about, but it's so true. I look back since then, and there's been plenty of times where I maybe should have done something more responsible, but an opportunity was there. And I swear, man, almost every time I'll think of you and I'm like, all right, I'm down, let's do it. And it ends up being awesome. So
Yeah,
I want to give you props for like reaching out of your comfort zone and doing all the planning for the race, because I know how uncomfortable it can be
yeah,
to do the opposite of what
yeah.
you're naturally set up to do. But what I did want to ask, you rattled off the class. can you just give us a breakdown for the people? Like what does that class mean? Because I know it has to do with the modifications on your rig at some level.
No.
What is that?
So I'm in more of a sportsman's class. It's not a pro class. Some race organizations they allow for pro classes, or they make it a pro class. Usually it's if there's a lot of vehicles in that class, they'll turn it into a pro class. You get a little bit more props and special things if you're in a pro class, but it doesn't really matter for this conversation. I can get too much in the weeds. I can get crazy. So um, Class 7 or Class 7S in each racing organization is a little bit different. But way back in the day, that was Ivan Stewart, and it kind of came from this class. It's a mini truck class. You have to run a V6 engine. You have to run 35-inch tires. You have to run, I think they changed the steering. Your front suspension has to be as designed from the manufacturer. So if it's an I-beam, it's an I-beam. If it's an A-arm truck, it's an A-arm truck. You can't change that. Um, you have to, like I said, you have to have leaf springs, which is a huge limiting factor. You can only get so much travel out of a leaf spring, and they're only so strong.
Right.
So that's a huge limiting factor. You have to have, you can't have like a fiberglass body. It's you have to have a stock frame. You can't lengthen or shorten it. I think you can't shorten it by more than like 2 inches.
Can you move the suspension mounts and stuff on that in that class too? I mean, I know you guys stay A arm, but can you move the pivot points and
You
stuff?
you have to keep the pivot points at the same spot.
Oh, okay. So you're locked in there. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot of limiting factors to it. And you're limited to 18 inches of travel in the rear as well. And you can't have secondary suspension, so you can't just have like one leaf spring on there, just
No.
and then a four link in the
Four
rear,
link, one single leaf
or like
spring.
with just a piece of metal looking like it's supposed to be there. They do a lot to make sure that you can't go crazy in the class. Um, but which is nice because there's trucks out there that'll blow past you and rip you apart if you're in their way and you're racing on a day where there's big trucks. But yeah, the V6 thing is another big limiting factor. You can only get so much power out of a V6. There's no if you have a four-cylinder, you can have a turbo uh, if it comes factory. But yeah, I mean, there's a litany of rules, but primarily the 35-inch tires, leaf springs, and the factory thoughts of your like basically your front suspension is what limits it to. You can only go so fast and get so much travel out of that in that
Is,
regard. So
is there still a lot of people running that class these days then? Because I know
there's
in the
not
mint there was
there's
only a
not
couple.
yeah, so a lot of guys run in the class 2000, which class 2000 is a little bit more open. There's a little bit less rules. The steering's open. You can run a 37-inch tire, and then you can run whatever motor you want. But it's still,
Oh,
they call it a steel door, or door slammers. They have like the door slammers club. You still have a leaf spring, but you can get a lot more power, and it's a little bit more open. So you can move up a little bit and get a little bit more performance out of the vehicle in that class. And actually, I've run in that class before, because my class is more limited, but that class is less limited, and so I can just move up to that class without
Mhm.
doing
oh,
anything
okay.
to my truck. So just because I have a more limited class.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
but that's a fun class, and that's a little bit more of like locally grassroots. You'll see a lot more of trucks in that class just because they don't want to have to deal with too many rules. You put too many restrictions on people, but it used the 7 class used to be super huge, a lot of factory sponsors. And now it's all the factory sponsors are going into the side by sides and the trophy trucks.
That's too bad.
So what you're saying is there's an LS swap in your future, get a little more power out of that thing and
There is
jump up
there's a
class.
there is a possibility in that. 4 links in LS. Who knows? Who knows what I'm gonna do? But real
Uh,
quick, to touch on your point, Nick, about the just say yes, it's and I wanted to when you were saying this, our good buddy Sean, who kind of helped run the pits, he said to me the night before, he's like, "Hey, I don't really want you to think about this, but this is a super dangerous thing. I think you should write something for your like to your family in case something terrible happens. And it was something, of course, I don't think about that stuff. Like, of course, nothing terrible is gonna happen. Life's crazy, and you just get through it, and everything's fine. But I was laying in bed, and I actually wrote something down, and I wrote something down for each member of my family, my wife, my kids, and my parents and stuff like that. And every single one, I put just say yes to adventure. That's and like I get a
Yep.
little choked up about it, but that's kind of been my motto in life. I mean, I don't know when it started happening, but I started just saying like, yeah, let's just go do that. Because a lot of times I'll be like, I don't know, I'm not prepared. And like way back in the day, like, I don't know, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and this might happen and that might happen. I'm like, whatever, let's just go do it. And I've had the absolute most outrageously fun and wild and stressful and sometimes not stressful adventures because I was just like, screw it, let's go do it. What and I think um my temperament about I do well thinking on my feet, and that's how I get through life in this manner. um I can adapt super well to any situation and make things work. And so that skill has really provided to help, help just make things work. Because like this race, I decided to race this race about a week after the Hammers. So
Wow.
late January.
Yep.
And so I
Yeah.
had February to prep. You know,
I remember getting an email, asking if we were going to pit again this year, and I'm like, well, he's cutting it a little close, but frick, let's do it.
I wasn't planning it all year. I was planning on racing in April, and then there was some scheduling conflicts, and I'm like, well, I gotta get a different race in here. And the mint popped up, and I'm like, I can do it. I'm open. And I'm like, I got a lot of work to do. So I'm gonna do this. So yeah, I shot messages out to everybody. I was like, hey, I'm about to call my sponsor and say, let's do this thing. Before I do, I need to make sure that everybody's on board. Sure enough, dude, they're just like, there's salty earth guys like, let's do it, let's roll.
It's you only live once. I mean, the thing is you only live once, and you can plan for everything and you can make the choices that in theory are the right choices, but you don't know that tomorrow's going to be here. And I think unfortunately a lot of people um they'll let life dwindle by without living it, you know?
Yeah,
It, it
absolutely.
it's like Mike and I have talked about it on earlier episodes, but we'll have people ask us about getting out with kids, and it's like, well, I'm trying to wait till they're a little bit older and they're ready. And it's like, dude, if you try to wait till they're ready, like their childhood
Not
is
gonna
going to
want to
be
go anymore.
gone.
Yeah, it'll be
Yeah,
gone already.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that's cool.
that's super true.
It's a good motto.
Yeah.
So, unless Mike has a different question for you, I'm curious. Of course, we want to dive into this year, but I know the backstory. Mike knows the backstory. I'd like you to touch on some of the previous years, because anybody that knows you and knows how passionate you've been about this knows that you've had some trials and tribulations to get to a race that you finished. So, without like the full story, just touch on us, if you will, for some prior years and maybe the catastrophic issues that prevented you from finishing each of those races. And then we can start diving into the fun stuff of what happened at this one.
Let's take a quick second to remind you that if you're enjoying this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button. And most importantly, watch or listen to this until the end. It helps a lot with the algorithm. Also want to say, if you enjoy outdoor and off-road content, consider checking out our YouTube channel, where you can see all kinds of other videos, including trail review videos, adventure videos, walk-around videos, and gear review videos. We'd also like to take a second to thank one of the title sponsors of the 2025 Rogue Overland Expedition, and that's All Dogs Off-Road Co-op. All Dogs Off-Road Co-op is your go-to source for Nissan off-road modifications. You can check them out at alldogsoffroad.com. And if you're enjoying this podcast, also consider checking out the All Terrain Nation podcast. If you're an old school Nissan guy, you're familiar with Dave and Danny talking about all things Nissan in the Nissan Nation podcast. Well, this is the revised version of that where they talk about all things off-road. So check them out. That's All Terrain Nation Podcast.
It's funny because I don't know, maybe 3 years ago or something like that. The first time I took the truck out, I was like, I was at a point on the truck. I'm like, I just need to slap it together and get it out and just go see if it works. I hadn't driven the truck in 5, 6 years or something like that, and so I kind of just like I slapped an intake. I just bought like some cheap AutoZone filter, stuffed that on. I kind of put it all together because I was running and stuff, and I kept getting zoned in on all these little things that had to be done right and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to have this thing done right to get it out to just go test and see
Yeah.
what does work, what doesn't work. So I rallied the troops. I said, hey, we're finally taking the race truck out to go test it out a little bit. You were there, right?
Yeah.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there.
All you guys were there. Yeah. And so sure enough, I get into it. I drive it. I don't know. I do like half a lap or not a lap. I do, I don't know, 100 yards, come back and look it over. And then I hop back into it. And I drive like another 100 yards and literally I feel the back end go down and I see the tire bounce the left or right rear tire just go flying past me.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, we lost the tire. And sure enough, I just sheared all the studs right off of my axle. And I'm like, oh man. But you know what? We got it back together, put some new studs in it, ran into town, got some stuff, kind of slim shamed it back together, and I was able to bounce around it. Found a huge issue, which was important to know. The truck wouldn't shift with the manual transmission that I had, or the automatic transmission I had in it, which is a stock trans. It needed more input signals from everywhere, and it just wasn't an option after digging into it and finding out what was going on with it and why it was doing what it was. It wasn't an option for race truck use. So it's kind of I'm bombed around in second gear a bunch and had a little bit of fun jumping around a little bit, which was it was very frustrating, but at the same time, it was nice to actually get in it and drive and feel like, oh yeah, this thing, you can drive over some stuff on it and it's not going to kill you,
It was awesome.
But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it relit the fire in me a little bit. But I brought it home and I swapped in a manual transmission out of Frontier, and got that going and finally got it going again. And then from there, I think we took it out. We took it out to King of the Hammers to test it one time, which was pretty cool. Found that it jumped really well. We jumped it like 6 feet in the air, probably 20 feet long. That was pretty epic, and it didn't like break or anything. And it was really amazing. Like I didn't even do it on purpose. I just saw this kind of lip, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go hit it, and that thing just shot me into the air. It was so awesome. I landed, and I got out, and I was just like, my eyes were like friggin' dinner plates, and I'm like, you know. And that's when I was like, we got to get this thing racing. Like if I can send it, that far and that high on accident, like this thing can handle some beating.
Yeah.
So we entered it in the California 300, which is out in Barstow. We entered it in that race, rallied the troops, got out there, and we made it. And that course wasn't like everybody was telling us when we got there. This course sucks terribly. It's like it's made for side by sides with 4-wheel drive, and there's little goat trails, so just be careful. And so we're like, well, whatever, we're here. Like this is what we do. But so stressful going through tech, because I'd never been through tech before with my truck, and there are so many little dumb things that you have to have, and you don't know which ones they're going to harp on. Whether it's secondary door latches or the window nets or they have to be mounted this way or the rollover vent tube for the gas tank and blah blah blah. Well, we're getting ready to go tech, so we fill up the gas tank with gas. Gas is just spilling out of the bottom of my fuel cell, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And we were like kicking dirt on it and trying to wipe it off. And I'm like, we got to get over there. So we drive over and we're just like, please, nobody look at this. We like let it drain enough because I think it was coming out of like the top fill plate. Like, and the fact that I like raced basically twice with it like that, and wasn't able to fix it like basically 2 times. It's really dumb in hindsight, like that much fuel coming out of a truck. And anyways, but we got it through like we got into tech with an inspected truck, and I'm like, and like all the guys are there, and I'm like, John, the bead locks. He looks down, and there's like screws coming out of the bead locks. They're not even like finger tight. Like you can
Oh
see
my
them, they're
god.
like backed out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but like we made it through tech, and that was like that was like a step. I didn't know if the truck was gonna get through tech. I had no idea. But that, it's like I set these little goals. I'm like, we got to get it through 10. But then the next step was we got to get it off the start line. Um, but yeah, we got off the start line and we were actually doing all right, not too bad. My co-driver, who's my race partner, he's never been in a race truck ever before. And so he was, learning how to use the GPS there at the track and learning, how to call turns and the controls in the truck. I mean, and unfortunately, he's just like me, almost worse sometimes about just like, hey, let's go do it. All right, cool, sounds good. Um, but yeah, we got about I don't know, 15 miles in or something like that, and it was kind of a bump down and then up a big steep hill, and it was like a off camber hill. So when you go down the bump, it kicks you up, and the back end came over, and so we were trying to drive up the hill, kind of like pointed this way, and slowly our back end just came like this, and we were pointed up the hill, perpendicular to the track, and we couldn't get back on the track, so we backed down into the valley to try and get around and back onto the track. Got stuck, and that's when I blew my rear end up completely, um, which is pretty wild because it's like a Ford 9-inch 33 spline axles, and I just blew it to smithereens.
Because
I think part of that was
you're
go ahead.
two-wheel drive, correct?
Two-wheel drive, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And even four-wheel drive, it would have been a little bit of a work. I don't think it would have gone back up that hill. It was
Yeah.
pretty soft. And I mean, I was just pointing at the sky, standing on the brakes because I was like, I don't want to get this thing turned sideways because we'll go friggin' tumbling down this hill.
Dude,
And
what was the
well,
finish rate of that race?
it wasn't good. I think it was like 60% finished in that race, if I remember right.
Golly.
And even the guys that my buddies were talking about, he bent his I beams, and he had some crazy I beams in that
Mm.
truck. They beat their truck. He's like, I'm not racing that race again. There were so many people that said, I'm never racing this race again. It was too rough.
And
But
I want to chime in for a second and just comment on the navigator thing is, um, I've done rally school, like several rally
yeah,
schools. So Dirtfish Rally doesn't sponsor this podcast, but I've been through pretty much all their classes. And when you get to some of their higher classes, you start to learn how the navigation and the calling out of that stuff goes. So what I'm asking is, can we kick your buddy out and I start navigating for you? No, no.
let me just
What
get
I'm really trying to say is,
yeah,
just for anybody listening, it's not fair to think like, oh man, it's the navigator's fault, because if you guys don't have practice calling that stuff, he doesn't know what words you like to hear for how severe the terrain can be, and also
yeah,
how far ahead that you want it called. I mean, it is a
yeah.
very much a relationship thing where you have to build a relationship with that driver and that navigator.
Yeah, absolutely. And this last race, it's 90-mile loops, and we had talked about him getting in the driver's seat for the second half, and that he was like, "Hey, listen, dude, if we're driving and I'm calling turns, and if we get in sync, don't feel like we got to change because our goal is to finish this race. It's not to just get seat time or whatever."
Yeah.
And so we were driving, and it usually takes, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 miles to really kind of sync up him to figure out the depth and where where it needs to be calling turns and seeing how the truck is, and how fast can we go in the truck, and then with that, like, when am I going to call the turns with the speed that we're able to go on that given course and stuff like that. So we jogged pretty quickly. And for this race, we ended up just, I mean, we got so much seat time now. It's like we know we know both what we're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
So but navigators, that job is not easy at all. I
Not at
mean,
all.
it is, there's so much that you have to pay attention. You're looking for people behind you coming up on you. You're radioing race miles. You're making sure your driver's not going to come up on something that he's not prepared for. You know, you're looking at the hazards. You're trying to read the hazards on your screen so that you know if it's a real hazard or if it's just like, hey, there's a rock in the road. But there, there's a lot going on in the passenger seat, and a lot of people think you're just along for the ride, and you are not. It is, you know, sometimes a lot of guys get like seasick, like and get really sick to their stomach because there's so much that you're looking at and stuff
Mhm.
like that. It's a very well known thing. A lot of people take Dramamine when they're in that Kodak seat.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think I'll probably pass off to Mike on this to kind of get into it, but I think we'd like to know about how this race went. And I know Mike was out there, so maybe Mike, if you want to kind of intro into this and let's hear about how this successful race went.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of want to talk about. I know as the pit crew, we had a whole bunch of spare parts when we came back at the end of the night off your racetrack. So just break it down for us, man. I know you guys ran 3 laps. Kind of break down how it went for you and you know, how you felt out there.
It was really cool this race because the past 2 races, I did this race last year. We did about 70 or 50 miles, something like that. And I had overheating issues the entire time. Long
Oh
story
yeah.
short is I found out that the radiator cap wasn't the right cap and didn't have the pressure. It didn't have a spring pressure on it. It was
Man.
just it was just a cap. So I was puking coolant out the whole race and overheating, and it was just so much not fun to race a truck where you're just constantly like out of the guts because you're getting, and I got it up to like 280 degrees a couple times for a hot minute,
Wow.
which
I
should have
can't
blown it up and
I had a lot of
maybe did.
respect for that motor after that race. Because I
Yeah,
told Sean when you left last year, I'm like, that motor's done. Like, it's
I
gonna
thought
have
so
to
too.
come out and be
I got
gone through. I mean, because you ran it at like 280 for 40 miles. I swear, man. Every time you'd come in, it was puking, you know, and cooling out of it and everything
yeah.
else.
Even then, last race, we were working in the garage till the night before the race. You know, there was a bunch of stuff that I was trying to get done that I didn't quite finish, and I mean we were just last minute stuff. And there's
Yeah.
always last minute stuff. There will always be stuff you overlook, and it's so hard. Me at home working in the garage trying to think of everything that I need to fix because that's every race truck has 400. Well, every home built race truck has 400 things you want to redo or that you're in the middle of
Yeah.
redoing, or there's just so many things to remember and as many lists as I can put together. This again is not my forte. I'm trying to remember everything. And there's always things that get forgotten or whatever. But so this race, I will say I was way more prepared. Yes, there was things I forgot, like the socket to change the lug nuts. I
That's all right.
grabbed
We had it.
I grabbed
We had it.
3 of the wrong sockets when I was filling my pit boxes. But all the things that I forgot were not I mean, I finished. So everything I forgot was apparently wasn't that important. But it was really nice. We camped out at Prim with our trailers, which was cool. We were right there by the race start. But yeah, we got through tech, no problem. We got through and started the race at about 10 a.m. Um, and first lap about 20 miles in, the truck was feeling pretty good. It felt a little bit down on power, and I'm still trying to start. Tomorrow's kind of a big day for me. I'm going to start pulling the engine apart a little, or the intake and stuff like that, and checking spark plugs and whatnot. But it felt a little bit down on power, but it wasn't that bad, and it wasn't getting worse. And so I was just like, this is the truck we're racing, you know. If it blows up, it blows up. We're here, we're doing it. We spent all this money and time.
Yeah.
But it didn't, nothing changed. So we were just racing. About 20 miles in, we blew a tire, which was not a big deal. We got the tire changed and that's the kind of thing. It's like we blew a tire, and I'm like, well, I hope everything works. I hope the jack doesn't fall apart. Like everything that you theoretically think about to do in the truck until the rubber hits the road, until you actually have to do it out in the middle of nowhere, and you know, hoping that all your tools are there and everything. Until you have that moment where we changed the tire, I was like, wow, that was quick. We got the tire swapped
You
out, and
guys
we're
were
back
quick
on the
too.
road. Yeah, it wasn't bad. So we blew that tire and we went around again and came in the pits. Nothing too eventful. The first, I would say, 3/4 of the racetrack was just, it was hell. The first time around, it wasn't too bad because we were all seeing it for the first time, and I wasn't thinking about it too much. I was just trying to keep keep the rubber side down. Um, the place where we blew the tire it's the Fox Proving Grounds, and there's just massive whoops and
Yeah.
tons of rocks in there. So it's like a bad combination of both, and you can't hold any speed through those whoops, not in my truck at least. It's like the trophy trucks can blast through there at 70 miles an hour, and I'm cruising in there like 20 or 30, just
Oh,
and it's painful and
It's a
exhausting.
brutal area.
Yeah. And then you go from there to the rock quarry, and the rock quarry is just it's just this kind of loop around all over the place through this rock quarry, and that is just ripping the steering wheel out of your hands. You can't go fast because there's a million turns. You probably don't want to go fast because of all the rocks. You'd be blowing tires if you were going through there any faster. But that spot is just it's not fun. So we got through there, and then it's a little bit more desert stuff where you're actually able to get up to speed. A lot of fun areas after that, and then you go up through what they call Beer Bottle Pass, and it's a very tight 1 lane kind of windy road up a ravine, I guess you would say. And that section of the course is sketchy because it's also lots of boulders. And when we get into it, especially near the end when we were doing it for the third time, my co-driver, instead of calling out, because they in the on the navigation, they'll give you the route and you're following the route, and there's hazards that they've put forth in the route that they give you, and there's so many sections where it's just nothing but like every 50 feet there's a rock hazard. And so he just call out, oh, it's rock hazards basically everywhere again. Just watch out for all the rocks. Um, but in that section, if you hit like there were so many like my hands on the steering wheel were gripping so tight. I was wearing gloves the whole time, but I got a blister through my gloves of gripping that steering wheel so tight
wow.
because every time you would get around a corner or something like that, the rock you'd hit a rock and it ripped the steering wheel out of your hand, and all of a sudden you're pointed off a cliff. And I swear, every time I went through there, I was like, I don't know if I can go through that. I don't know if I can pull this off again.
So
So
there,
that
so
was,
there is a physical aspect to it. Then I mean, they like
oh
you
my
were
gosh.
literally just
Oh,
physically
yeah.
tired in the later
Phys-
portion of the
Physically,
race.
I felt the same as when I ran a marathon at the end of it.
Wow.
I mean, if you've driven 11 hours ever, because that's how long it took me to race that race. It was 11 hours. I never got out of the truck. I never unstrapped my seatbelts. 11 hours is a long time to be in a vehicle, period.
Yeah.
11 hours is a really long time to keep your focus like solid on what you're doing, to do anything. Um, Meanwhile, like you're bouncing around, your neck's going all over the place. I'm manhandling the steering wheel in certain parts. We wear race catheters, which is basically it's a condom with a tube on it, and we're peeing out the bottom of our pant leg. And so you're just going. I will say first lap, I think it was first lap and a half or something like that. We were we were in each lap's about 3.5 hours, I would say. We got into about halfway through the course, and me and my co-dog we were just exhausted. Like we were out of it. We had no more motivation. We were just grinding hard, and we came to pit and we're like down. And our buddy Sean and Ian, I don't know who made the sandwiches. They threw the window nets up and they're like, "Here, eat this." And it was some bologna sandwiches and some waters, and we freaking ate those bologna sandwiches,
Like
dug
bologna
some
and
water.
mayonnaise.
Yeah, best sandwich I've eaten in like forever, dude. It was so freaking good. But it was amazing how just like getting those carbs, getting that, fuel in us, while they're fueling the truck, it completely changed my perspective. I literally said like 5 minutes back out, I was like, bro, I needed that so bad. I feel like I could just it was almost like we started all over. Like, here we go. We finished the first half, let's do the second half. Um,
You
Is
we
guys
can
that
do
would get
this. But
you guys got so focused out there, man. Every time you came into the pit, we're like trying to shove water bottles in the windows and trying to give you food, and you're like, just get us out, just get us out, just get us out.
yeah,
Like you didn't want to stop for anything out there.
yeah, and part of it was like you kind of you're a runner, Nick, so you get in that zone, right?
Yeah,
You get in the zone, that focus zone,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you don't want to get out of it because the second you get out of it, it takes a little while to get back into
yeah,
it. And so, yeah, when we were coming into pits and stuff, he's like, we were both like, dude, we gotta stay in the zone. We gotta stay in the zone
yeah,
because the second, you lose that train of thought, that focus. It takes a bit and you can make a big mistake if you're not focused out there. The second you take your eyes off the road, or if you're not focused, it could be really bad. And then it almost was at the very end of the race. But so we got our sandwiches in us, and we went back out. And then the third lap, we were trying to get around before it got too dark.
yeah.
We didn't even get close. But the third lap, we got out and we were going, and we stopped for some guy that was stuck. We tried to pull him out, almost got stuck ourselves, pulled off. Meanwhile, there's guys passing us. My fender got bashed in a little bit from some guy, and to get past in desert racing is a wild affair. You have a little screen that the guy behind you will push a button and it'll show up on your screen pass, and you got to figure out, and depending on where you're at, sometimes there's places you can kind of move over, and sometimes it's tight, and you're just doing the best you can to let them pass because there's all different classes. There's I don't know, 15, 16 different classes of vehicles out there. Some are faster than others. And so I don't know, we got past all the time, and when we're wheels up on the side of a berm, and there's guys coming in the same way, and you're like this, like almost roofs touching, and they're bouncing off your tires and bombing down the desert. I mean, we must have bounced off like 10 guys' tires while they passed us, and
Wow.
one or two guys that we passed them. I mean, it's so sketchy out there when there's racers racing behind, coming up on you, and if you don't get over, they'll nerf you.
Yeah.
So
They're not
that's
scared to nerf you. We got nerfed.
what I was gonna ask, like the whole Days of Thunder Rubbins racing thing. So they come up behind you. There's whatever system that allows them to I communicate to you that they are trying to overtake you. What is that like? I know you said it's crazy, but what's that timeline? Is it like, okay, I got to just figure it out and get out of the way, or is it like move your ass right now because they're coming through? How does that work?
That is something that you learn. Like, don't don't get over, or don't ruin your race because some guy's up on behind you. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Because it is stressful. It is stressful as shit when someone's bombing up on behind you, and you're looking for somewhere to get over because you don't want them nerfing. Because that could go south. They nerf your back end over, especially if you get light in the back end and you're going to be tumbling.
Mm.
Their sirens are on too, which doesn't help the stress factor. They're clanking
So you're getting
horns,
pulled
they're
over, huh?
sirening, they want to get past you. So the biggest thing is find a good spot to get over. You know what I'm saying? It could be 2 seconds, it could be 20 seconds, it could be 2 minutes before you find a spot. But the biggest thing, and that was a lot of communication between the two of us, both looking for spots to get over, and him just reminding me like, listen, don't get over if you're not comfortable. Don't get over if you're not comfortable, because as a driver, you start to get really stressed about getting over, and it's very mental about trying to stay cool and calm and getting over where it's safe. Because if not, you can get up, out in kind of the sticks a little bit, and there's rocks aplenty out there that'll take you out immediately. So we only got nerfed once, and that was because we had this guy following us, and it was going, and depending on where you're at, it's not a big deal. You know, if you're in a big three lane wide whoop section, I'm over on the right just waiting for somebody to pass me. Like, please, Pete, please pass me here. This is where I want people to pass me, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
But we were coming up to that single track rock beer bottle pass, and I did not want anybody behind me. And some guy rolls up on me right before we get to that spot, and I'm looking for a place to stop. And then there's also a thing that shows you if somebody ahead of you has like stopped in the course. It's like
Oh,
a
wow.
caution. So that pops up, and so I slow way down. And there's a guy on the road waving a light at us, and it's nighttime now. There's a guy waving a light. There's a guy behind me flashing his sirens, and the guy behind me doesn't see him. So I slow way down. He comes, he nerfs me, backs off, and right as I'm coming up on this car in the middle of the course, I'm kind of pulled up over a little bit to the right because that's where I was kind of sitting looking for a spot over the right. And he comes up way up on a bank, comes down, bounces off my front tire, and then just goes bombing past me. And I'm like, dude, this guy had to have seen because he has the same system. He knows that there's some kind of hazard in the road coming up. And so, you know, we were dropping mother uppers on this guy, and we were hating on this guy so much. Like, this guy, he could have killed somebody because, you know, there was a guy in the road, like, flagging us down. We almost came to a stop. We had to come so slow because, you know, we don't want to hit some dude that's stuck in the course because we had to basically go where that guy was in order to get around him. So that was probably the sketchiest part of the race as far as like other cars on the course and stuff.
So
But yeah.
real quick for those who aren't racers that are listening. So you're basically saying that some GPS unit that you get associated with the race, you guys are all linked up. So you can actually see competitors who are downed in the track. You can be communicated to through that somebody wants to pass you. Is that what that is?
In a fashion, yeah. So if you break down, especially on the course, or even if you're able to pull over, you're required to press the little caution button, and then us coming up behind you, and it's just a little box basically that mounts on a little ram mount. It's got like 4 buttons and a big LED screen. And it's kind of basic, but at the same time, I think it's pretty helpful. Um, so it'll tell you like caution like 100, which means 100 yards, 700 feet. So as you're coming up to these people that are broke down either on the course or just right off, you can slow down to make sure that you're not going to be, you know, just plowing into some guy that, you know, maybe blew all of his tires off his car that's sitting in the middle of the race course. So which is really nice. And then yeah, the same thing with the push to pass as they call it. If you're coming up on somebody, you know, you see them, you know, 300 yards ahead of you or so, you press that button and then it's going to start flashing on him. And truthfully, that's the co-driver's time to start saying, "Hey, let's start looking for a place to pull over," because that's not in front of my face; it's in front of his.
Right.
And I can see it sometimes, but a lot of the times I wouldn't. There's lights flashing everywhere. And so you don't even want to flick your gaze over to see if it's a pass or a caution or what. So it is nice. It's a nice system to have. I think it helps. I think it's really good. I didn't have it last year. They didn't have it last year. They haven't had it for a few years there. So I was happy to see that they went back to that because it's, you know, it costs $250. It's like a mandatory $250 thing. But I think for safety, I think it's a really good tool that they add to a lot of the races.
And
I
if
think
you
they
don't,
should put those on the California freeways out there too and make everybody
Yeah,
run
no
them.
kidding.
if you don't mind sharing, what is it, you know, what does it cost? Everybody always says, oh, racing's so expensive, you know, you're gonna go broke racing, nobody makes money racing. I mean, when you go down and you race the Mint 400, let's forget all the money you have into the truck. So this is all like probably public knowledge anyway. What does it cost just to get entered into the race and pay whatever fees and have whatever things they need you to do? I mean, is that $1,000? Is that $5,000?
It's about 1,000. We'll say it's $1,000 to enter the race. 250 for the tracker. Trying to think of any other specific race costs. I think that's the gist of it, just for the race. It can be
Okay.
up to 1,500 depending on what class you're in. I'm in a sportsman class, so it's a little bit cheaper. I think big trophy truck guys, they pay like 3,000.
Gotcha.
But
Not too
you know,
bad. I
the
mean,
risk,
really.
yeah, it's not too crazy, especially if you get a little sponsor, which shameless plug, ShiftPod. ShiftPod's my sponsor. He came on board with us last year. We kind of scumbagged him into doing it. And then he realized like this is so cool. And he was totally on board this year. And he really helped us out in getting into the race. Um and he's an awesome guy, and the shift pods I freaking love them. It's a cool as 10. I know you've had a lot of experience with Christian and shift pods, but the biggest cost really are all the little things that you got to buy to make sure that the truck's not gonna, you spend we'll say $1,500 to get in the race, right?
Okay.
You don't want to just go out there and break in the first 5 minutes. So you want to put the best stuff you possibly can afford in the race truck. This year we got a new Lawrence GPS because we were running an iPad with a Bluetooth puck, or not a GPS puck, and that was just not cutting it. The iPad just couldn't handle the terrain changes and stuff like that. So we got a new Lawrence
That
GPS.
thing's
I
sweet
found
too.
what's that, Mike?
That thing was sweet too, man. The
Yeah,
display.
and it's got more
That thing
bells
was
and
bad,
whistles
eh?
than we know what to do with. But super super high um, quality GPS that'll let you know right within a couple feet of where you're at almost. Um, I found that the steering rack was leaking before I went out there, so like a week before I had to special order in a steering rack real quick and slap that in. Um, Gosh, there was fuel tank seals, which, like I said before, I got all new seals. I was like, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I don't need fuel spilling out the back of my truck when I go up to
Probably
tech.
smart.
Yeah, I know all my pit crew was like, this cannot be going like it was the last time. Like, please fix the fuel thing. Um, but yeah, I spent a good 3 days on the fuel system, replacing all the seals in that, and between the man hours and all everything seems like it's $300, and there was probably like 10 things that were $300 right before the race.
Nickel and dime you to
And
death.
yeah, and then it's gas toted out there, it's food, and all said and done, I bet you it's about $3,000 to get out and race, with all the things. That seems like the budget. There's cheaper races local, which I'm a lot more interested in doing, as long as the timing works out. But like I said, the Mint 400 it's kind of like the crown jewel for me that I wanted to put that in my hat. I wanted that feather really, really bad. And kind of like me and Sean and Mike and all were talking about it. 3/4 of the way through the race, I think it was on lap 3 where we were still going. And
Yeah.
Sean's like, I didn't plan this far. What is he supposed to do if he makes the podium?
We didn't
And
we didn't know where to go.
yeah, and I never thought about it. I never thought in a million years I was going to finish that race. My perspective was go out and get as far as you possibly can. Just go race and do the best you can. If you finish, that is gravy. Go further than you did before.
Yeah.
Make more progress.
Yeah.
And if you break, figure it out and make it better. That's been my mindset every race. Just go further. Just do more. Just be better. Don't be worse than the time before. So when we were coming around, it was it was surreal for 3 or 4 days afterwards. Coming over that finish line, like I could not believe it. Like I was like, how on earth did this
That's pretty amazing.
truck that we friggin' slapped together over and over and did things wrong a million different times and fix this and fix that. I mean, and there's still a million things that I can fix on the truck that I was like, that's kind of shady. That's kind of jinky. We should do this. We should do that. But I think part of it is like no truck is perfect. And I've talked to a million guys, like no truck's ever going to be perfect. If it was perfect, it would never leave the garage. You would never
Yeah.
get in it because there's always something to change or fix or redo. But truthfully, it's get it out there. It's kind of like that roadkill mindset a little bit, especially for grassroots racers like myself. Get it out there. If it breaks, figure it out,
Yeah.
upgrade it so it doesn't break again, and then find out what breaks next. But go out there and have fun and have these adventures because that's what I'm all about. Like I just want to get out there with my buddies and just go try. You know, trying is like the most important thing for me. It's like, if you don't try, you're never going to make it. That's for sure.
So that's
There's a good saying that I'm probably going to screw up, but it's something along the lines of perfection is the enemy of good, or perfection's the enemy of
Yes.
good enough,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that holds true a lot. Being type a lot of times I'll have these projects that I don't start because I'm like, I don't quite have everything lined up. It's like, and I think that's why Mike is such a great co-host on this podcast, because I don't think I would have fired it off as soon as I did if it wasn't for Mike, because I was waiting to like get everything fine-tuned and everything. And he's kind of like, well, we got the meat and potatoes, like, let's go,
Yeah.
You just gotta
Yeah.
send it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that,
And
I
that's,
mean, it's good that you're out there. And I mean, dude, I know I'm pumped for you to finish. I mean, I know the races you've been through where you didn't get, you ended up on the side of the racetrack, and it's so cool that you made it all the way,
yeah, it was such a like life goal accomplishment. And coming home, or well, when I crossed the finish line, well, let me jump back a little bit. So the last lap, I'm babying the truck, right? I am like, we don't need to go fast. We just need to get there. And so I'm just I'm trying not to push it past any level. I'm not, I'm trying to keep RPM down. Everything that I'm trying to do um is just keep the truck together. Don't don't come flying into something unaware, etc. So I'm doing it the whole last lap, and we're coming in, and we're both like, you can tell both of us don't want to say anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want to jinx it. And
Don't
he's
break the
calling out
heart.
every turn, like the last, I don't know, 10, 15 miles, our both of our mindset, he's like, don't send it, because there's an infield spot where there's a lot of really good, like, drifted around. And like my second lap, there's a couple spots where like I almost freaking spun it out, but like, I'm coming out, we're grooving. The last lap where he was just like, just cruise around the corner, don't send it. Remember, this is a little bunny hop, no big deal. He's calling out everything. We're golden. So we come down, and about I'd say a mile from the last pit, and from the last pit you go straight into the infield section. It's the end of the race, right? Um, about a mile before the last pit, we see some guys behind us, and they're much faster guys. And there's this big long section. There's kind of an S turn, and then you're in the pit. It's nothing. 3 lane wide, just big desert road. No big deal, right? So we see him coming up on us. So we get through this one little section, and he's like, "Yeah, we got two coming up behind us. Just hang over on the right." I'm like, "All right, cool." So we're getting over the right, and these guys come blasting by us. It's nighttime. Dust at night is a million times worse than dust in the day. Like, dust, it is not your friend. So they come blasting by us. They dust us out like crazy. You can't see anything. So we're driving by the side of the roads. You're looking at the side of the road to make sure you're still in the road. Um, and last minute, he remembers that in this S-turn section, the right side of the road is washed out about 4 feet.
Oh
And
no.
Oh
so
my gosh.
every time before we went through it, it was, you see it a mile away, you just stay way over the left. And the left side is big and the right side is small where the washout is. But we're on the right side of the road, and we start coming up to the section, and he goes, "Oh shit, it's that washout." And like, basically an eighth of a second to react to it.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and the washout is right in the middle of us. So we're about to go over this way. So I cranked the wheel into it because I didn't want to just tumble over. So I cranked into it so that we could go down it and and kind of come out of it that way. And we went down and we hit hard, like the whole thing. We just and came out of it, and we were both like, I was white knuckling, like, "Oh my god, we just wreck." Like, literally, it's like 300 feet from the finish line.
Oh my gosh.
And the truck was, he's like, "Is it good?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's still good. It's still good." But oh my god, talk about last minute, like, you know, you work so hard, you're being so careful, and it's just like that split second could take you out any section of the race. But yeah, then we got through there, we got over the finish line, and like driving up and over it, we didn't know where to go, so we're radioing, where do we go? Where do we go? And we come in, and luckily a buddy of mine that is one of the race organizers, he's flagged me down, and we pull in. Sean is FaceTiming my wife and kids. They're all watching it live. He shows me the camera, and I'm starting to tear up. I'm like, you know, um, but you know, and then we get out of the car, and it was just exhaustion. It was just the happiest exhaustion, you know. Like I said, it was like running a marathon. You just every emotion is flowing through you. You don't know what to feel. You're just kind of like in this daze of you know, that just happened. Like it was unbelievable. At the same time, it just felt so good to know that like we did it. We finally did it, and we didn't expect it at all.
That's amazing, man. That's going to be a moment that, you know, you remember for the rest of your life.
It is, and you know what? Like it was really cool to come back home and talk to my kids about it, because it was just like, hey, listen, you know, set goals and work towards them. It doesn't matter if you achieve them or not, as much as the, you know, it's the journey, right? And
Yeah.
that was my last race. So, you know, we broke, but I had so much fun my last race. It was stressful, it was crazy, but it was all about that journey, and like the time and the stories that we had with all my buddies there. And this time it just puts a beautiful little bow on the top of it, you know, and it's just it was great to you said, hey kids, you know, so, you know, work towards your dreams, because you never know when one of them might come true, and the feeling of that is pretty freaking amazing. So never give up. Persevere is my word for my kids. I was like, what's that P word? Persevere. That's right. Never give up. Never give up.
I think it's good they see all those failures too, you know, along the way, because that is
Yeah.
it's part of the process, you know, and it's
Yeah.
you know, I like, you know, when we fail, when something happens around here, you know, we make sure the kids see it, so they see that that is part of that process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always tell
Absolutely.
my kids, I'm like, it doesn't matter if you fail. What matters is,
Oh yeah.
did you learn from that failure, right? So that you're growing as a person.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's the number one thing is, you know, learn from it, and enjoy being in the moment too.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
you
a
can get
big deal.
so tied up in what's going on, and forget, like, we do this for fun. And there, you know, there's definitely some times where I looked at my co-driver and I was like, why do we do this? Why are we doing this? You know? And then later you go, okay, I remember why we did that, because it was freaking epic. And we had a lot of fun doing that. That was badass. So
So now that you're home, now that you're back, you got the truck back and everything. What all broke? Like, what are you looking at for the future? I know you got motor stuff. I know you definitely need a exhaust system on that truck now. I'm glad to see your ears quit bleeding, but what
oh
all
my
broke
gosh.
during the race, and what are you? I know you're starting to tear it down. What all you think you're going to have
Yeah.
going on with it?
The headers are cracked really bad, so I'm gonna need a new set of headers. And that was probably caused because the new exhaust I put on it right before I went out, um, just completely ripped off both my mufflers. And so, like doing 100 on the lake bed with that thing screaming in your ears, like my ears are still ringing. I'm for sure did permanent damage. And one of the things I was telling somebody the other day is it was so loud in the truck because it was open headers. Um, when I started to hear anything from my co-driver, because you could barely, like when I was going, you couldn't hear, I couldn't hear my
Yeah,
co-driver. So if I started, yeah, I mean, you couldn't make out what he's saying. You could kind of hear it, you know. So I started letting off the gas anytime I start hearing him say something, so that I could get the turns
oh
or
man.
the hazards every time. So you're like, you know, I'd hear it, and then I'd get back in it, and it was bad. Like I want to put like a 14 chamber muffler on that thing so that I never have to hear that truck
It
again.
was so
Like
loud. We could
everybody
hear you
loves a
guys coming
loud
from
truck,
like
but
2
not
miles
not
away.
anymore. Yeah, it was it, and
Oh,
it was like a bee was screwing you in the ear the entire time, like a giant dog-sized bee was stuffing in your ear.
So is
Yeah,
this
so
was this the design, or the exhaust fell off on the course?
the design of my exhaust was not protected enough.
Okay.
It was a little bit too loud, truthfully, before the exhaust came off, but it was bearable.
Okay.
This time, it just completely ripped both tailpipes off. One was just hanging by a thread. One was completely gone, and I think it was like the last one of the last pits. It was Sean, Mike, and Ian. I don't even know. I just remember Ian was standing in front of the truck, like holding us up, and he keeps looking down and he's smiling, and I just hear them, and I can feel it, like bang, 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 grip, smash, and I'm like, what are they doing? And he is just smiling and looking at me and going like that. And then I hear him go, ah, and then you hold up the exhaust and like, go, go, go. I'm like, all right. And then I'm step on it just super loud, even more loud than it was. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it was pretty wild. So the exhaust ripped off, need a new exhaust. I'll probably go with like a couple like actually chambered quieting mufflers. I don't really need I don't
I
need it.
don't think you're
I'd
going to
rather have
squeeze
a
that
little
much
bit
more
less
power.
performance. Yeah,
Yeah.
if it takes away performance, I don't even care. Um, but the rear shocks there, I definitely have some kind of issue with the rear suspension where it really likes to buck up, especially when I get too fast over any kind of whoops. The back end comes up off the ground and you kind of feel yourself swinging back and forth like that if you get too hairy, and that's like a recipe for rollovers.
Yeah.
So that's something I've been dealing with the truck for a long time. I really need to get some good shock tuning in, corner balance, weight it, and find out where my weight is. I'm going to do a lot of weight reduction on the truck. I pulled all the doors off of it, and the front doors weigh probably 100 pounds each, it seems like. So I'm going to do a lot of weight reduction on those rear doors. Um, yeah, I think the motor might be hurt. I'm not sure. It's down. I think it was down on power. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was just the exhaust. I don't know. Maybe it just sounded like it because it sounded so terrible.
Well,
Um,
you still got airflow sensors on the front of that too somewhere, right?
for
To
for the intake.
for yeah, for the well the airflow sensors for adjusting air fuel ratio in the motor, right? Like pre-cat. If you got a bunch of
It's got them
cracks
two
in the
sensors.
if you got a bunch of cracks
That's
in the exhaust manifold, there's a good chance that thing was reading all wrong too.
that is very true. Yeah, because they're post. Um,
There
yeah,
should be down towards the
that's
collector, right?
yeah. They're right be, or they're right before or right after the collector. So there could definitely be some things going on with that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that could be causing some problems. Throwing my mix. You know what? That's probably what it was. I bet you that's what it was.
Yeah,
Because
because
that's
this
what it
thing's
felt
probably
like.
sucking all kinds of air
I don't
in.
have like misfire codes. It was just running junk.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it just wasn't running. It just didn't like it had like a bad mixture. Like it was not running at its peak performance. I hope that's what it was.
Yeah, me too.
'Cause that's a good fix. That's an easy
Dude,
fix.
if that's what it is, I want a piece of your rock that you carry because I'm gonna put it on the intake
Oh, the
all
power
black
rock.
because that
Oh,
motor's been through crap, man. I've never that motor should have died about 10 times over again.
that's true. That's true. But yeah, so I haven't found any other big smoking guns. Everything else held together really, really well. Yeah,
Oh,
I kind
speaking
of.
of smoking gun, what about your Optima you melted down? Your battery.
Oh yeah, yeah. We had a battery that was smoking, almost left out of the pit. And when you said it, I just
Ian was the
heard
one that
someone
actually
says,
saw it.
"Yeah, it's like your battery's smoking." I'm like, "What?" So they yanked the battery out. I have two batteries, which is, I mean, I will say thanks to all the guys that told me for all different reasons, like redundant systems. I have two fuel pumps, two fuel pickups, two fuel filters. So I can switch between that. With having a battery go out, you pull the battery
Yeah.
out, and this truck's still running fine. Um,
Nice.
So yeah, that that fell apart. But yeah, I need to get rid of those Optimas. They never do well for me. It seems like I get a new set every year. This time I didn't get a new set, and one of them tried to smoke itself out. So I think I'm going to clean up a bunch of wiring. There's a bunch of wiring that needs to be cleaned up, just because there, all these different little things that you add over the time. You're like, oh, we need to put this in, and you just slap it in. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, we'll redo this another time. Um, but seats, we got to add a little bit of cushion to those seats because my butt cheeks hurt so bad when I got out of that truck.
They're
You're not
pretty thin.
25-year-old anymore, Groot.
Oh, not 25. My butt cheeks, there's no more. I mean, there's cushion down there, but it needs more for the scenarios that we're putting it through. So, yeah, there's some creature comforts we're going to work on. But I think we could probably put it back together and do a little bit of testing and stuff. We'll see. I'd like to race in May. I'd like to race in August, but it's going to be, a little bit more diagnosis on the truck, and then once I have a good handle on what is and isn't, you know, good, then I'll, set a next race date. Basically, is kind of where I'm at. So
Nice. Well, we're ready when you're ready, man.
So I think there's got to be a lot of support, right? Clearly, I mean, I'm a father and a husband as you are and Mike is, and you can't go on these adventures without a support system. And then also the cost of these adventures, right? So I think I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak to your emotional just emotional people type support, and then also why don't you take a minute and do give a full plug for any sponsors that are supporting you in this journey.
yeah, my wife is like the coolest person on the face of the earth because when I said, hey, I want to race this mint, she's like, just do it. Absolutely. She's, as much as she might complain over the 8 years of me buying race truck parts, I think she just wants to like them to actually mean something. Um, but you know what? The night before when I was packing, and I would say the week beforehand, I was in the garage every day after work, all weekend, working on the truck, and she was holding down the fort with all the kids and everything, and without a single complaint. She was, she'd bring me dinner out in the garage. Everything okay? Do you need anything? Do you need some water? And like that is worth its weight in gold, like best wife on the face of the earth. And packing to get out of there, she came out in the garage and I'm packing pit boxes. I'm getting the race truck on the trailer. I'm getting gas cans and tools and what tools am I going to need? And I'm completely focused on the race truck and all the stuff that I need to get in for the race truck. And she's bringing out and she makes a pile of all the stuff that I need to like take care of myself. Pillow, sleeping bag. She's got a bag of snacks. Um, she was like on top of all the things that I was just not like I was very focused on the racetrack. I had no idea what I was going to do with myself. I go up in my room. She has all my clothes folded, clean, packed in a bag. She's like, "Let me know there's these pants or whatever." I'm like, and by the time I got into like put stuff in the bag, I was just going to throw a couple pairs of pants and shirts and like a toothbrush in there. Like I'm like whatever. I don't even care what I wear. I don't care what I have. As long as I'm clothed, I'm good. I was so exhausted that night. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And yeah, I walked in, I saw that, and I like almost came into tears. I'm like, "You're the best wife in the world," beer. I'm like, "You gotta stop with this. I'm never gonna live up to this. I don't know what I'm gonna have to pay when I get back." But she's absolutely awesome. And then my kids are super cool. That they're super proud of me and stuff like that. It's in my pit crew, John, Ian, Mike, my buddy Dennis, Justin, Dave, my brother Dave, all just salt of the earth, like coming out and making sure that they were all just like taking care of the things that I wasn't thinking of because I was one track minded. Like I was having a hard time thinking about anything other than whatever the truck needed. And, my buddy Justin's cooking food and Sean's, making sure that I have a jacket when I get out of the race truck because freezing cold when I got out after the race. He's like, "Get him a jacket." And I'm like, "What? I think I need that." Yeah. But all you guys just like making my dream, putting their time and effort into helping me make my dream come true. It's absolutely priceless, and I couldn't thank all you guys more because it was a dream come true. And the guys that helped me get the all the parts for the race truck, Shift Pod number one, awesome guy that just really wants to help and is super into helping other guys do awesome things. He helped us get into the race. He helped us with some of the navigation stuff, and he really stepped up for this race, which I'm super stoked with. Altering Concepts, he uh he hooked it up with a new light bar for the rear of the truck. Super good dude. He's local to me. He's also a racer, and as soon as he heard, he's like, "Oh, you're local. That's cool. Come on by." Loaded me up with shirts and beanies and everything.
That's awesome.
Super cool guy. Really appreciate it with him. And as soon as all these guys, as soon as the race was done, they're texting me. They're like, "That's awesome. I'm so stoked for you." And then Steven from Rugged Routes, both companies he owns. He hooked it up huge too. He actually got me the GPS, hooked me up with a new cable for my antenna for my radio, battery terminals and stuff like that. I drove all the way out to his place. He's like, "Come over to my house. I got this stuff." He's like, "I'll get you hooked up." And it was all last minute, of course, because that's just how everything times out, especially when you decide a few weeks in advance. But he hooked it up huge, and I mean, he just kind of threw up a bunch of information, a wealth of knowledge on comms. Our comms were amazing this year, and that's part. Sean came out and programmed our radios, so we all had our own radio channel. All that stuff kind of came in together. As he went off road a while back, they've taken care of me huge with parts and support. And he texted me after the race. "That thing's awesome. Everything go good. Do you need anything?" So all those guys really. It's not just well, Nitto Tires sent me eight brand new tires, and that was with Shift Pod working with Nitto Tire
Wow.
to get tires. But all these guys, it's not just here's some parts. Good luck. It's that they have like a vested interest in me, my race program, and that's why I really like the people that I work with. Like I don't want just some sponsors that's like, "Here's 10% off," even if they were just like, "Here's a part," you're like, "All right, cool, that's really nice of you," but these guys are all like invested in my success, and that's like the best thing. They want me to succeed, and they want, yeah, there's some business stuff to it, but it's more about they want to see me get to the end, and hey, I've got their parts on it, so that helps. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
but
That's so
but yeah,
cool.
you really can't do it. It takes a village to race. It takes a village to race a family. It takes a village to race, and it truly does. Like my race partner Justin came on board with me about, I don't know, about 5 years ago when I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, listen, I'm trying to build this race truck, and this is not a one-man job." And I was kind of coming to my wits end and the end of my financial situation. I was like, "I don't know if I can keep affording this. And I was like, "Do you want to partner up with me on this?" And he's like me. He's like, "Yes, let's go do adventure crazy stuff." And he's like my brother. I've known him since high school.
Nice.
And we've just been through life together. And this is just one more thing where he's like, "Of course, dude, let's do this. Let's figure it out."
So
And
awesome.
it's not like he's like some millionaire or anything, but we figured it out along the way. Like, "Hey, we need to get this part." He's like, "All right, well, like next month, let's put some pennies away." you know.
Yep.
And that's what this stuff is. This stuff is like, like I said, an agent was built with random things that I've accumulated in my garage over the years. Like just things you're like, "Oh, I can't afford a bunch of new bolts. Let's go freaking scavenge all this stuff. We're all off-road parts or whatever." Slowly we're getting rid of all that stuff now, and we're actually putting real race truck stuff in. But there's definitely like I know the best because I've seen the truck from cradle to pinnacle, I guess you could say. Of all the little janky things on the truck, Mike Mike has seen a little bit of all the janky things. Sean's seen a little bit more, but you know, he's like, oh, what's this? You know, like, oh, don't worry about that. I did that last race. Don't worry about that. It works fine.
None to see here.
Don't mind
yeah,
the
yeah,
man behind the curtain.
yeah. So now it's kind of nice. It's a lot more fun to work on the truck now because it's like everything works on it. Now let's just make it nice, make it clean. Let's rebuild the center console. Let's get the doors out, make it look nice. I wanna repaint the inside of the truck, you know. Now it's like, let's make this into a race truck. You know, it looks pretty
Nice.
cool already. You know, it's got a cool hood and stuff like that, but up close it, you know, it's got its dings and beat up and stuff like that. But it, you know, now we're like moving towards like let's make this thing really run and make it look cool and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
Nice.
I can relate to that. It's tough when you have a project. I have a 73 Datsun 240Z, and I purchased it before kids, and
mm,
went through the whole thing, right? Like it's fully restored at this point. And but the thing is it took me 10 years, and I had to get some help to push it over the finish line at the end. And the thing with these projects is, I mean, man, you're just grunting through all those things that
yeah,
just have to get done, and you're like, man, I can't wait to the point where I can put those gauges in, or I can do this,
yeah.
but here I am, like, whatever, running brake line, and it's like, this sucks, but you
Oh,
have to get through that stuff to get to the fun
Yeah.
stuff.
dude,
I remember.
real quick, grinding through the wiring harness to get the truck started. I have a YouTube video on it. I think I have a couple on it. And the when I finally got it started, I just remember because I was grinding for 3 weeks on wiring. I mean, I had alligator clips on lead lines and just stuff. It was a hot mess. And I was just like, at one point, I was just clipping stuff and putting power to stuff and hoping something worked. I mean, I had wiring harnesses scattered everywhere, Haynes manuals, and like pretty good at that kind of stuff. But at the same time, you're in uncharted territory. Nobody does this. Nobody
Yeah.
does Nissan race trucks. So you're in uncharted territory, and you're just grinding. You know, I mean, I at one point now I don't even remember what I was doing, but at one point I would fall asleep and dream about wiring harnesses and oh, what about this? What about this? What about? And I'd wake up and I'm like, we need to go check that. And I'd write it in my phone, check this, check that, check this. And that's like an old thing from my mechanics days when I was a professional mechanic. Um, I firmly believe that the sleeping mind works through problems when
Yep.
when you check out because I've fixed cars 50 times with stuff that I like right as I'm falling asleep, I'm thinking about that car or something like that. Like, why don't you check this? Why don't you check that? There's something weird that goes on in the brain when you start falling asleep. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, you have to slog through some stuff in
Yeah.
order to get to that fun part. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that is a physiologic thing. That is the truth. Like your mind does, you give it all that info, and it's like you keep giving it input, keep giving it input, and finally you're like, all right, screw it. I'm just gonna quit for the day and I'm gonna go to
Yeah.
bed. And your mind catalogs everything and actually does, there is still some problem solving happening. So that's
Oh yeah,
legit. Yeah.
for sure. For sure.
Um, if Mike doesn't have a question, I wanted to make a comment, group, because gosh, man, you're like an onion, there's so many layers we could peel away, right? But for the sake of being tidy, I'm making just a few notes on some major things. You made a comment about leading up to the event, or the race, I should say, being in the garage every night, every night. And I think that sometimes, I know with Rogue, people will look and they'll make comments, oh man, you guys went and you did this, and then you were at More Expo, and then I mean, you guys are just doing stuff all the time. And all of us have full-time jobs. And I think the thing is that the takeaway of that comment you made that needs to be said outright is, if you want to do all these things and you want to have these adventures, you have to be willing to put in the sacrifice and the work that's associated with that, right? And for you, you got to buy whatever for the race truck. Well, maybe you don't get to go to Starbucks every day that week, so that you can afford that part. And we want to go on this trip, and you got to make sure the truck's not going to break down on the road. So that might mean that, after you tuck your kids into bed, you're out to the garage for 3 hours before you go to sleep, and then get up and go to work and do it all the next day so that you're ready for that trip. And I know Mike can speak on this too, but I think that's something that people need to realize, is that adventuring is, I think, necessary in a sense. You have to realize, though, that you have to be willing sometimes to put in the work and make the sacrifices to allow that adventure to happen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my biggest thing is um make sure you have your good balance. And like for me with my family and stuff like that, um making sure that my family is taken care of. So when it comes time for me and my wild plans, I mean, I've been married for 20 years. My wife knows what to expect at this point, but I've set some expectations to where she knows that when I'm like, hey, I want to race in here, she knows what's going to happen. She knows that I'm going to be out in the garage. She knows that. But prior to that, like you take care of your family and you take care of your friends.
100%.
And when it's go time, all that work with that on that side of things, that's when they'll be there for you. So you be there for them, you take care of them, and then you'll have your time when it's like, hey, it's go time. I'm going to be doing my thing. And yeah, there's many times where I've slacked off and I don't want to go out and work on the race truck. And like, if you want it bad enough, you're going to put in the work. And
Yeah.
if you don't want it bad enough, then you can watch YouTube or shows, and you can just live vicariously. And sometimes I live vicariously, and then it gets to a point where like, no, this is my time. Like I'm not getting younger. I need to
You
attain
got to
that
do it
goal. I
now.
need to do this thing. Living vicariously only gets you so far.
Yeah.
All I could keep thinking of is the Goonies, dude, when they're down in the well and he's like,
This is our
it's
time.
our time down here, Oh man.
Love the goodies. That's what it is, man. This is our time. This is
That's
my
right.
time. This is
That's
this is what
right.
happens. And that's how that's how it felt when I got out of the truck. I'm like, this is my time. This happened. I did this. Thank you, everybody. This is us. This is our
Yeah.
time. That's exactly what it was, dude.
Now, Mike, having had the opportunity to be out at the pit crew, Groot has gone through everything or commented on a lot. We're gonna give him the opportunity to comment on anything else, but is there anything that he's missed, like from the perspective of the pit crew? Is there anything about this adventure that maybe you would comment on or bring to the surface from your experience there?
No, I mean he pretty much covered everything on his end. We've got a saying at the Rebel Rally is the staff kind of run our own race. And I mean, obviously we're not in the race truck with you guys, but it felt a little bit like that to us too, running out there running pits. Sean and I did the mileage when we got back to town from leaving here, going out there and coming back, and he burned a full tank of gas out there. I mean, we did almost 250 miles driving around. Like we were racing you guys from pit to pit.
Yeah, from
You talked
jumping
about,
from one pit, yeah, to the next.
yeah,
And
because
yeah,
we
you guys
main
were at
pit.
every pit, yeah, which was
Yeah,
amazing. It blew my mind. I thought we were gonna just have like two pit areas, maybe, maybe two people there. But every time I
yeah.
pulled into a pit, everybody was there. I was like, geez, these guys he's putting down some
We
muscles. It
were
was
we were
awesome.
moving, and we were moving at 25 miles an hour like we were supposed to be doing too. We
Yeah,
legit
yeah,
were,
sure.
but
Yeah, sure.
but
But
I was laughing when you were talking about that sandwich, man, that Ian ended up making. He ended up bringing all that stuff. It's funny because we were at that pit too before you guys got that sandwich, and Ian got all that stuff out and laid it out on the tailgate. And he's like, "Hey, you guys want a bologna sandwich?" I'm like, "Freaking bologna sandwich? Who eats bologna anymore?" And by the time we're done, dude, we're all scarfing down Wonder Bread, bologna, mayonnaise sandwiches. And I'm gonna tell you, like you, I was like, I didn't realize how hungry I was until I ate this most amazing sandwich, dude. It
Oh,
was like
dude,
the
I've
best
never had a
sandwich in the
bologna
world.
sandwich. Yeah, I've never had a more delicious bologna sandwich in my life. Oh,
I
it's
was like, I'm
amazing.
like, I'm like, Ian, how often do you eat bologna sandwiches, man? He's like, last race. That was the last one I had, was last
Well,
race.
and when I finished, he's like, "Hey, who wants a peanut butter and jelly?" He made me a peanut butter and jelly. Like, when he pulled in, I got out of the truck. He's like, "You want peanut butter and jelly?" I was like, "Yes." And like next thing I know, I'm like eating peanut butter and jelly and like drinking a beer. I'm like, this is weird.
Oh, but it was fun, man. Like we had a good time. It was stressful for me too, because you guys would roll in and you're like, get us out, get us out, get us out. You know, when the battery melted down, um, you guys, I don't remember if it was who it was in the truck, but one of you guys was yelling, "You got 5 minutes! You got 5 minutes to get it out!" And freaking Sean and I are leaning in the back doors, with our wrenches, like trying everything we can to get these stupid bolts undone. And we're trying to wrap the terminals in duct tape because they're still tied to the other battery. We're trying not to catch and start a fire back there.
Still, they're still wrapped in duct tape.
Yeah, yeah. Good luck with that. I know
Oh,
Sean and I, like, we're trying to wrestle because you can't, with the doors on that truck, you can't hardly get in the back to anything. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the fire extinguisher's cutting in on your chest and
yeah.
everything. And I know, Sean and I are trying to lift the battery out, and he finally grabbed it with one hand and chucked it out the window behind him, man. And dude, I've never seen a gel cell battery like puking water out of it. Like that thing was melting down
oh.
internally. But yeah, the exhaust, man. Like I was the one underneath the truck, like beating on it, beating the exhaust out from underneath it. When the monkeys showed up, that was a whole thing
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah. That was wild.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, man, it was fun, dude. I was freaking wasted by the end of the night. I mean, I know you guys were
Yeah.
tired. We didn't do anything like you guys had done, but dude, I was wasted by the end of the night. I was so ready to
Yeah,
go to
it's
bed.
it's just a long day, and it's
It is.
it's stressful, and you're just running. You kind of just putting your head down and running and doing what you need to do. Because I've been in that position. I picked for a couple guys and run. I've run
Yeah.
that a bunch of times, and yeah, 11-hour days of just nonstop go 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 one thing
Yeah.
to the next. We've got to do this. Oh, the tire that I blew, they were trying to fix the tire in between pits, and
Oh yeah, and that
there's
was
just a million
yeah.
things that they were trying to get done, right?
Getting gas, coordinating that,
Yeah.
getting stuff out where we needed it.
Yeah, because I don't
It is.
did
It's not the race, but it's like we say on the Rebel, it's our own rally we're running. It's our own race we're
yeah,
running. Just trying to
yeah,
keep up with you.
yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah,
What is the after the adrenaline dump? Um, what is kind of the down cycle for you? How are you sort of recharging? Did you sleep for 3 days? I mean, I know like on the rogue expeditions, when we finish the expedition, and we have our squadron leaders, so they're leading a column of people, participants, and then I'm basically kind of facilitating the whole thing. When we finish, I always tell Mike, like, dude, I'm just going to follow you home. Like, I need to just stop thinking. I don't want to be in the lead anymore. I'm just going to sit behind you and just look at your truck and just go basically brain dead, and you take me
Yes.
home. So what was that like for you, like coming down off of all of that?
Yeah, the next morning, that next morning when I had to pack up the race truck and pack up camp basically, it's just autopilot. You're just like, I know I had to do all that. And I packed up the race truck, I packed up the pit boxes, put everything in the truck, towed it home. I had to make like 3 phone calls just to chat with people because I was like, who wants to drive 5 hours after you've just been in a truck 11 hours getting the shit beat out of you? Who wants to get back in a truck and sit there and drive? So that was a rough drive home. It was really exhausting. Yeah, I was calling friends and family just so I wouldn't fall asleep just because I was just zoning out. I'm like, oh, I gotta just get out of this. And so I got home. I parked the truck in my cul-de-sac, and I came in, and my my wife gave me a glass of wine. I chugged the wine, and I went straight to sleep. And luckily it was the weekend, so I slept like the half of the next day, and I got out and I unloaded. I had to get the race truck, the trailer back, so I unloaded the race truck, unloaded all my pit boxes, and at that point, I'm like, I need this all done so I can just put it to bed for now, so I can just check out and just not think about it for a little bit, just because
Yeah.
there's just so much mental capacity going on for however long. I'm like, I just need a break. I need a mental break from all this crazy. So yeah, so then, and then once I got everything situated, I kind of cleaned that garage and got all my pit boxes put away and everything kind of set up, done. I'm like, the truck wasn't washed or anything. I just put it in the garage and I was like, all right, I'm good. I went to work for that week. And this weekend, I was kind of like, it was nice to not think about it. And this weekend, I'm like, "Oh, I'm just gonna wash the truck, and then that turned into let's get all the doors off of it. Oh, let's pull the center console. Let's pull the seats off. We gotta wash the seats. And so, but like it was kind of enjoyable, like it was kind of enjoyable. I don't know, maybe it's because I know old girl. She went through and she made it to the end, so I got to treat her right,
She
like I want
earned
to
the
wash
she
her
earned
out.
the love she's getting now.
Yeah, so and it's nice working on the truck. I will say it's nice working on the truck without a timeline and being stressed about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
So
huge.
it was nice. It was nice to get that all pulled apart and it's right now I'm just kind of cruising on it and I'm happy. I'm just so happy that like everything worked out. It's weird because like normally I'd be like looking at the truck like now it's broken, it didn't make it the last race, and like what do I got to do, and it's not good enough here. Is this even is all this work and money and time and everything worth it? Now I'm like, yeah, it's worth it, dude. Every single
Yes.
minute I've spent doing this, it's
Yes.
worth it. It's rekindled a little bit of that fire that I had through all these years, because you suffer a lot of disappointment and a lot of self-doubt when you're going through it for 8 years, and yeah, I love the adventures and all the time, and I would keep doing it. If we didn't finish, I would keep doing it. But getting that finish, it definitely lights the fire. The fire's burning a little hotter now. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, all right, if we could do this, we could do anything. So it's good to get the win in. It's
Yep.
really good to get the win in. So
How disappointed are you going to be now if something happens your next race? I don't want to jinx you, man. I don't want to put that on you, but
you know what? From
now that
here
you
on out,
finished one,
yeah, dude, it's so gravy from here on out, dude. I'm telling
nice,
you, like it's just I'm just gonna enjoy it now. I want to
awesome.
I want to get it built up to where I can just take it out and go friggin' flying around in the desert with friends, just to take people on rides in it, just so they can
That's what I'm
experience
waiting
it.
for right
Yeah,
there.
dude.
I know.
Sign me
I
up
want
for
to give.
that.
I want a desert trip. And get you guys on. Just
Yeah,
freaking heck. You guys go take it. See what it does. Like something about a race truck when you strapped in, you got your helmet, and you're barely able to look around, and the pumper's going, and you're talking on comms, and it's so visceral. It's like you're in a freaking starship or something like that. But it's a lot more. Well, it's a lot crazier than a starship, I think.
that's
Dude,
awesome,
But
man.
it's
I
just,
can't
and
wait.
then just driving over stuff that you don't think you should be able to drive over is pretty rad.
I think so when I've done the rally stuff, it's so loud, right? And when you say visceral, it's so true. Like there's so much input and there's so much going on, but yet you're somehow balancing the line of controlling the chaos. But the time that we went out, the story you talked earlier about when the wheel fell off, I was blown away because race trucks have never been my thing, right? Like massive suspension was never my thing. I grew up with import, like street racer type scene, and then of course the off-roading. But it was mind blowing. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm probably going to overlay a video clip here. It was mind blowing. I mean, you were just like the stuff, the front
It was
suspension
nuts.
would just eat up. I mean, you come blasting over this,
It was
bush or
nuts.
whatever, and then you're, I don't know, 3 feet in the air, and then you crash into this freaking wash, and the front's just like whoosh, whoosh, and it's just,
Yeah.
it's. I can only imagine what that's like in it because outside was like that's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's even better inside, and that's what fuels 8 years of friggin' beating myself to death in the garage and spending money. And I'm telling you, that bug it's a dirty, rotten bug that bites you, and you just it just gets in your soul, man. It gets in your soul that I want both of you guys to. And my thing is, I before I had my race truck, I spent a lot of time at races, pit crewing, and learning the ropes of the races. And all I wanted to do was race my own truck. All I wanted to do was get behind the wheel. And then I got a chance to be a navigator, and I got behind the dash. You know what I'm saying? And I felt it, and I'm like, this is awesome. I still wanted to drive it. I wanted to feel what it was like. And like the first time I was in a truck as a navigator and I saw what we could do, I'm like, this is freaking amazing. And like, I want people to have that experience. I want, like, I'm not trying to make anybody into a racer, but I want them to feel what I felt and go like, that's out of control. I don't know how we just went over that and like nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? It's the coolest thing to feel, especially for off-road guys where, you're coming up on something, you slow down, you freaking, especially, off-road or like rock crawlers or stuff like that, where it's counterintuitive to what you normally do. And then you get in a racetrack and you're just,
Bombing stuff.
you're like, whoa, bro. And at first, like everybody, at first, the passengers sit there like stuffing their own brake and they're like, oh my gosh. And then you get used to it and you're like, this is cool. And then you're just relaxing and you're flowing, you're along for the ride and stuff. But yeah, I want you guys to get in and drive it. Like all my crew, all you guys, like I want you guys to go drive the truck and go feel it and see what it's all about. Because then I think you get a new appreciation for why it is people like me do what we do. You know what I'm saying? Like
That's
I know
amazing.
I know you have an appreciation for it, but getting in there and really just bombing
Really
through a
experience
good
it.
rally section. There was a couple sections at the Mint where turns were called out perfect, and I'm like almost full throttle, and we're just smashing through stuff, and oh, it is just so beautiful.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? That like, and that's what, it just feels that fire that's in you on it. There are sections where it sucks and you're like, I need a better truck. But we forget about those sections and we remember those beautiful friggin' rhythm sections where you're just bombing through stuff that your wheels are friggin' floating and oh, it's so
Groot, I
good.
almost think you need a moment alone right now, man. You're getting
Yeah.
really excited
Yeah.
over there.
On that note, guys, I gotta go.
Yeah,
My pants are getting tight.
that's awesome.
Oh man.
All right, I have two wrap-up questions that we
Yep.
ask every person that we bring on the podcast. So before I go into those, I just want to give Mike the opportunity, see if he has any questions that he thinks we missed, and then is there anything that we didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
Man, coming from my side, I just appreciate you letting me be part of the program. And I mean, it's freaking fun, dude. I love it. Love being out in the desert. So it's a blast. Like I said, I'm ready for the next one if I can make it, man.
Yeah. My biggest thing is like, spending time in my garage working on my truck is cool, but I like that. I love it when somebody comes over and works in the truck with me, provided that they're good at mechanical things. I've had a
You got
few
to move
scenarios where
closer
like,
now.
don't come over again. No. But like I want to take the truck out to Mike's garage and tackle a couple things out there and get my Vegas crew hands on because I know that they're a very an extremely talented group of guys that could probably help finagle some of my special fixes.
Bring it down, man. We're ready.
But yeah, I think that's in the cards for the truck. It's definitely going to make a Vegas trip for fun,
Awesome.
for beers, for garage, and a little bit of tinkering. Even
Done.
if we fix one thing on it, I think that would be like the funnest trip. So
That would be cool.
anyhow,
Love it.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the two questions. Favorite trail that you've ever run, and then favorite place to go camping.
Ooh, good questions. Favorite trail that I've ever run? I think it would have to be out in Moab. It would be Poison Spider to Gold Bar Rim.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
And part of that is just because like I had some amazing memories of doing it in somebody else's truck and then doing it in my truck when I don't know if I should have dragged my, I think I left about a quarter inch of my skid plates on the trail that one time that I did it. But it was one of the most it was one of those trails where like I'm not sure if my truck will get through this, and then I got it through it, and I'm like, this is as much as I ever want to put this truck through. And this is my red Frontier that I had at the time. But that I built that truck, and that was like I wanted to build it big enough to where I could get through that. And I'm like, if I can get through this, I don't, it's not a rock crawler. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I just need it to be good enough to get through a trail of this scale, and everything else is just gravy, you know? Like, I don't need to get over bigger rocks than this. As long as it gets through this, it's the perfect overland rig for me, you know? Um, but that was probably my favorite trail, just because it was really, you know, it's very technical. It's got a lot of areas where it can really mess you up. You know, I got in some pretty hairy situations a couple times. And then also I've done it with some other buddies, and there's some just wild stories of, we call it the golden sleepover, of broken trucks and delivering pizzas in the rain at midnight on like the gnarliest trail. But yeah, so that's probably one of my funnest trails that I've ever done. And then favorite place to camp.
Favorite place to camp?
Um, I need you to weigh in on this one because my favorite place that I ever camped, I would say, is on the edge of a cliff in the little shift pod on a road trip. Um,
Yep.
I have no idea where it was.
Overlooking Monument Valley. It was
Yes. Oh
outside
my
of
gosh.
Valley of the Gods in
Dude, that
Arizona.
was
That was a
just such
beautiful spot.
such an epic spot. And truthfully, like I don't know if I have a favorite place to camp per se, but like every favorite place I've ever camped has been on a road trip.
Yeah, buddy.
Like just
Yeah,
the
that's
most
awesome.
epic camp spots, the most epic trails, the most just super epic everywhere. And like I'm bummed because I haven't been on one in a long time. And you know, I got racing and you know, my girls are getting older, so they want to go on all these like extravagant vacations and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I really, and like my daughter drives my red truck now. Like that's her truck.
Oh my
And I'm like, I
gosh.
really, yeah, I'm like best freaking vehicle for a 16-year-old ever,
Dude, you
right?
hooked her up,
Yeah.
man.
Oh
Holy
yeah, dude.
cow.
I was like, you gotta be the coolest kid at school. But yeah, we're working to get it kind of back in action, and I'd really like to her to take me out on a road trip. That's
Oh,
kind of a
that would
goal
be
for
so
me and
cool.
her. I want her to drive, and I'll just go cruise along and get her a little bit of off-road chops on a road trip. So
Yeah.
the red truck needs a little bit of work. She sat and I don't want to say rusted up, but like she sat for a while and she needs a little bit of love, you know, some brakes and just little stuff that, you know, when her truck sits and gets beat up hard and put away wet,
Yep.
uh, she needs a little bit of work. But yeah, every road trip I've ever been on was just some of the best adventures I've ever been on, truthfully.
We've
And I thank you for that because those plans, like I don't know how, like I've tried to do a couple trips myself, and they like I'm like I don't know why I bother. I'm like I'm just gonna go on a road trip because like you guys are gonna do all
oh
the planning and stuff, and all you just show up with like a vehicle that's capable and enough food for yourself, and you know stuff
Good.
so that you don't freeze at night, and and it's just it's like free excitement and adventure, and it's like the best. I
we
try and get all my buddies to go on them, so.
How
we
much did
love
you pay in
having you,
attending
man.
that, dude?
We love having you. We got to get you out this year. We'll talk a little more off screen on that. But hey,
Yeah.
there's a story that I actually want to tell real fast. And then, and I know this is like by far going into our longest podcast, which is totally fine. But I think you should tell a fast version of the Golden Sleepover because it is an epic story. You tell that, and then I'm going to tell a quick story about one of the road trips that you were on. So a little backstory on the Golden Sleepover is that Gone Moab event that anybody deep in the Moab the Nissan community probably was familiar with. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore, but just awesome event. So here we are. We're at Gone Moab. I don't even remember the year. Probably 2016 ish. give us the sort of expedited version of the Golden Sleepover, because it is a story worth having people know.
All right, so super abridged version. So I think I ran a trail during the day and we get back and I get a phone call that one of the guys is up at the top of Gold Bar Rim, I guess, which is past Golden Spider or Poison Spider, which is it's a pretty gnarly trail out in Moab. Poison Spider's gnarly trail, Gold Bar Rim's gnarly trail. Um, and they link those two trails. I think there's three. It's like they call it the trifecta. But
Trifecta.
yeah. So we hear that one of our buddies is broke up there, and I think I got a text or something that said, "Hey, can you get his truck and trailer and bring it to the entrance of Poison Spider?" I think was what they were asking me to do. And or they wanted me to get his truck and trailer from the entrance of Poison Spider so they could bring it to the exit or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. So I'm kind of like, all right, well, I'm gonna go check and see what's going on here. So I go to the entrance of Poison Spider, thinking that they're in like the first part of it or something like that broken. I had so little information. And so I get up there and I park and I start walking up the trail and like nobody's there. And I start walking up the trail and I'm like, where they broke? And no service and I don't know what's going on. And it's probably 4 in the afternoon and storm clouds are kind of rolling in. And this is a long trail. It's like a 6-hour trail at
Yeah.
least to do that trail.
Yeah.
And I start walking up the trail and I get like 3/4 and I'm pretty far up the trail. And I'm like, where are these guys? I thought they were supposed to be somewhere near the entrance, right? So I'm walking and I sit there and I'm like looking around and I see it kind of spatters rain. It kind of pours like it does like a monsoon thing, pours for a minute and then stops. And I'm like, man, they're gonna be screwed. And up comes our buddy Joey, who has a big old Xterra on 35s and a giant rooftop tent, and it's a big built Xterra, and he's in this truck bouncing around, and he comes up, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "You're just walking this trail." Like he had no idea I was there at all. So he's like, "Get in, bro." He's like, "We're bringing pizzas to PJ," and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And so he's got like pizzas, and our buddy Nick, the other Nick, he's in the front seat, and I'm in the back seat with like 3 pizzas, and there's a storm rolling in, and we're driving through this whole trail in the rain. Like you don't normally do this, like you wouldn't want to do this trail alone.
No, it's
You
slick.
wouldn't want to do this trail at night. You wouldn't want to do this trail when it's raining, and it's all of those. And I'm just like, let's do this, dude. And it was some of the most skillful driving. Like I think 1 or 2 times we almost flipped because we were going down stuff in the dark. We didn't know where there was one spot where like we were walking and we're like, I wonder what's over there. And then I've been there during the day and it was like a 1,000-foot drop. And like I could have just been like, I would never have got that close to the edge if I while we're standing there. But yeah, it's raining and we don't even have flashlights, so we're trying to scope the trail with our phone lights in a couple areas because
Oh
we
my
just couldn't see in
gosh.
front of us. Like we could have driven off of a cliff, like at any time, like hoping that, I don't know. It was crazy sketchy. So we get out there and we deliver cold pizza to these 3 guys. PJ broke his both front half shafts and his drive shaft.
Oh
Wow.
gosh.
And we get out there and there was another guy that was out there just like staying with him. He's like, yeah, I was just gonna hang out with him. The rest of the crew had gone down back into town to go try and find some parts so that they could bring some parts back up, fix it, and get it off the trail. And it was literally like 3/4, almost. It was maybe like a mile from the end of the trail, but there was a bunch of huge obstacles to get through in order to get out of there. But yeah, so we got there, we ate cold pizza, we flipped open the rooftop tent, we slept 3 deep in three grown men, 3 deep in the rooftop tent of a Golden Sleepover there. One
And
guy
for
slept,
for
one guy slept
for the
there.
record, Blueberry's rooftop tent is like the smallest
Yeah,
Tepui
it was
tent.
like it was like a tight 2-person tent. Yeah, it was not comfortable, but at the same time we were happy to be warm and on it, like we were just happy we weren't sleeping in a truck. Like we didn't plan any of this. We got up there and we're like, oh, he's like, I got a rooftop tent. I'm like, whatever, dude, because it was late when we got up there. Yeah, so we slept out. We slept out in the tent overnight and woke up, and it was the most beautiful morning, and like you could just see forever. We were way up there. You could see forever. And we just kind of hung out, and they showed up with some parts. We fixed it, and we drove out of there, and it was just like a wild, epic, crazy night of just wow, that just happened to me, you know.
That's
So
so awesome.
another my trips where I just said yes, and I don't know how I didn't get hurt or died or whatever. So
Um, so I want to tell a quick story. This is one of my, I mean, I got a lot of Groot stories, but this is one of my favorites. There was a time where there was sort of this separation, right? I've always been very involved in the Nissan community. And then I've got a group of amazing friends that I don't hold it against them, but they drive Toyotas. And actually most of the guys that are now your pit crew there. And so we were on one of the rogue expeditions, and these two groups of people had never sort of crossed paths at this point in time, right? So Groot is for some reason like a day behind, and it's storming like crazy. It's storming like crazy. We all get to camp, and I'm keeping in contact with him, send him coordinates. Okay, cool. I'm not going to show up till whenever. But we'll just set up camp, or we'll just arrive at camp and we'll kind of mingle with everybody tomorrow. And so we all do our thing that night. Had one of the coolest quote unquote parties ever under these awnings. We brought a bunch of awnings together, and you can watch that. It's the Rogue Overland Expedition video 2017, I believe. But just an amazing night. One of the coolest quote unquote parties I've ever been at. It's raining. I mean, it was beautiful. So we all go to bed. Now, granted, none of the Toyota guys have ever met you at this point. And Groot has and it's actually pronounced Grooters, correct?
yeah,
But we've all called him Groot forever. So Groot is he has these altered personalities, right? And if you watch all the Rogue Expedition videos on YouTube, you'll see some of them here and there. There's like this cowboy figure, but he's got the one and action suit Groot, right? And it's this suit that's from, I think you got it at a thrift store or something.
yeah, $3.
And so he comes climbing out of his rooftop tent as action suit Groot. And you can't see it if you're not watching on YouTube, but Groot's a typical SoCal guy. He's got the stylish blonde hair, and so his hair's all slicked back, and he's in this suit and with Converse shoes, mind you, this 3-piece suit, Converse shoes. And the Toyota guys are like, Nick, come here, Nick. And I'm like,
I remember this.
I'm like, hey, yeah, what's up, guys? What's up? And they kind of nudge me and they point, hey, but they're whispering, not to be too loud. Hey, what's with the dude in the suit? And of course it's all history now, but it is one of my favorite memories of when these two groups of friends collided, so to speak, because it couldn't have been any better except you climbing out of the tent as action suit Groot.
Yeah, it was, and yeah, those are all like my lifelong friends now. Most of them, I would say. Yeah, I made some lifelong friends. You gotta show up like you are, so that way you're setting
Yeah.
expectations. So now, unfortunately, sometimes you set expectations and then you have to live up to them. So there's been a couple times where they're like, "Hey, are you gonna do this?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I just want to chill."
You got to keep
Like,
stepping
we
your
want
game up
groupers
every
there,
time
bro. I'm
now.
like, all right, dude, all right, let's go.
Oh man.
No,
All
that
right.
was
Well,
a good time. That was a really
man.
good trip.
I want to say thank you for being on. Thank you for being on, Groot. You and
Yeah,
I
for
haven't
sure.
talked in a little bit, and it sure was nice catching up with you. And I'm going to send you a text. We're going to talk a little bit about the expedition this year.
Yeah, for sure, dude. We'll be in touch.
Groot,
right,
where's
Mike.
where's all all your social media stuff, man? I know you've got a YouTube channel, and I know you've got the Instagram page. Where can people find you at?
The Grootx is my Instagram. Yeah, yeah. Grootx, just BAGROOTX is my Instagram and my YouTube. Probably be dropping some stuff from the race on the YouTube. I haven't put a ton on the YouTube in the last, I don't know, probably a year since the last mint. But there's a lot of other stuff from getting the truck built and stuff like that, and then a bunch of our adventures and whatnot. But then
Awesome.
yeah, on Instagram, a little bit more active on Instagram, especially when races start coming up, do a lot of live and stuff. So that's a good way to follow along. It's a little bit easier
Right
for
on.
me. But yeah, I appreciate that, Mike.
Sweet, man. Mike,
Sure.
where can they find us?
You can find us at Rogue Overland. I mean, I almost messed that up, dude. At Rogue Overland on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and all the places.
All right. We'll see you on the trail.
Copyright Rogue Overland 2025. All rights reserved.